what is the biggest Minotaur you faced in your life?
I would say it's been my mindset.
Okay, I mean, that's a very broad thing, so I'm sure we'll get into it. But before we do, welcome to the Minotaur's Maze podcast. My guest today is Adam Kaan, who is a Muslim entrepreneur and investor. He is the founder and director of Fit Dad Life Mastery, which is a program that helps busy Desi professional dads lose weight and get fit. Adam, thank you for being here and welcome.
It's a pleasure to be here, Zulfikar.
Brilliant. And before we dive into your Minotaur, is there anything you'd like to add in terms of your background briefly?
Yeah, nothing in particular. I mean, I can talk about my journey, either my mindset or my health journey, but nothing in particular. I'm sure we'll get into it as we progress.
Cool. So mindset is a massive topic. I mean, it's there's so many angles to it. It gets talked about a lot, especially in today's internet age. Specifically for you, what was that Minotaur mindset challenge? What was the issue, and how did you overcome it?
The biggest challenge for me, I mean, coming from a poor background, uh, brought up in relative poverty, I should say, um, the trusting people, learning to invest in oneself, learning to take risks, calculated risks, has been my biggest monitor. Uh, as I've mentioned when we've spoken previously, I built a business, an online business, to six figures a year for multiple years now. Um, and I did that through investing in myself into some programs, courses, and mentors. Now, it took me between 4 and 6 years to pluck up the courage to invest into this program or invest into this uh, coach or mentor to show me what to do. And prior to that, for about 4 or 5 years of fumbling about on YouTube, on blogs, and this and that, trying to figure things out by myself. But I would refuse to invest in myself and take that calculated risk. So I think a lot of people who have had similar experience to me, where they've seen their family struggle with money, they've struggled with money, um, they struggle to invest in themselves. And when you go up the kind of social ladder and you start to spend time with people who have come from different backgrounds, where they've maybe been born into money or they've never really struggled with money, you'll see they think and act very, very differently.
Brilliant. So, when you were going through that journey, I mean, there's a lot I resonate with because I went on something similar myself. But for you, when you were going through that 4 to 6 year period, what was it that was stopping you from hiring a mentor or a coach or a program? Like, what was there one thing, or was it a selection of things? Like, what was it? Was it, is this a rip off? Is this, I don't have the money, or is it really going to help? What was it specifically for you?
It was a selection of things, and one is I didn't have the money. I was teaching at the masjid that I was making £300 a month. In 2014, so I got divorced in 2012. I took custody of my kids. I had to leave my full time work. And in 2014, when I went to self-employed, I was teaching at the masjid. Plus, I was trying to do some like teaching privately one to one. So when I went to my accountant at the end of the year, I thought I probably earned about 13,000, 14,000 that year. It turns out I had only earned about £3,800. I
Wow.
was shocked. I was shocked. I mean, obviously, I was getting some help with benefits and stuff, but um, and this is why one of the things that I do praise about being in the UK is that we have this welfare safety blanket. And alhamdulillah, as soon as I was able to earn enough, I told the tax credit people I'm earning enough, and I don't deserve this anymore. And I always say to people, look, if you're earning enough, you should be honest and let somebody else who needs that money, let it go to them. So the so when I earned that, 3,800, I was shocked, and this is what I think, barakah, subhanallah. Like I thought this must be barakah. Like how did I survive on so little? And I was okay. I was still okay. I was getting by. So I didn't have the money to invest, high ticket, as you might call it. And again, high ticket is people define it differently. Some say it's 5,000, 10,000 pounds, and others say it's £1,000. So I this program was about £2,500. So to get that money together and to spend it all in one go, I was fearful of it. I was very, very fearful. But then you've got to take calculated risks. Like there's two spectrums, right? There's one person who is very, very paranoid, very, very fearful, very, very victim mindset. They are defeatist, fatalist, and what they think is sometimes, again, if you think that you're going to fail and you're convinced you're going to fail, you're going to fail, right? Whatever, they say, like, whether you believe you can or you can't, it's true, right? And whatever you focus on expands. And if you believe that you can't do something, or you believe something's going to fail, you will work to make that belief come true, right? So it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. That's not to say that we can just sit there and if you read the book Secret, you can just sit there and you can just visualize and affirm things into existence, right? But then on the other end of the spectrum is somebody who takes silly risks, just takes risks, and they're not calculated risks. So you need to be somewhere in the middle. You take risks, but you take calculated risks that you can quite often recover from. Like sometimes some big players will take big risks, like just either sink or swim. But I don't think it should be too much on the completely risky side or completely risk averse. It should be somewhere in the middle. So there was that. The risk, taking the risk, being fearful of spending the money. This is the only money that I have. I never even had it. I borrowed it at the time. Now, the other one is, I can figure this out all by myself. I can just Google it. I can YouTube it. Why should I pay somebody else? And you have this kind of resentment as well. I think when you are at rock bottom, or you're in that headspace, you feel kind of envious of others and kind of a bit of resentment of why should I pay this person? Why should I, like I sometimes see this from my head coach told me yesterday. He goes, look, we get some people on calls to join our program, and you can sense a bit of jealousy, sort of stroke resentment from them. He goes, from the way they talk, they just got on that call not to sign up to a program, but to just see what we're about, and almost say to us like, I'm better than you. Like, why and he goes, I get the sense
that's interesting. Would you say that's an unconscious insecurity and resentment of themselves for their situation, and which then manifests on the person they're speaking to, or would you say it's directly based on the other person?
I think what you just said, the first thing, is unconscious. So what it is, because we work with people that are quite successful, and sometimes some people are successful at a certain thing, or they've worked really hard, and then they see somebody else's success, and they think, well, how is he doesn't deserve that. And I've been there as well. Right? So you think, oh, he doesn't deserve that. I deserve more than him for whatever reason. Or, I'm a very successful entrepreneur. I've got a big business, but why has this guy got more clout than me? Or why is this person, he has more influence than me? Or why I don't have a physique like theirs? Rather than say, look, why don't I just work for it? Why don't I work for that thing that person has? I feel bitter and resentment towards it.
Yeah, I mean, you've opened up a whole can of worms in that little monologue there. So, I mean, there's just so many directions to take that. But before, like, we dive into any of that, obviously, you mentioned you work with successful people. Maybe just briefly explain what it is that you do and who you work with, because that obviously set the tone for the rest of the conversation.
So I work with busy professional Desi dads, dads who are, they don't really have a lot of time for the gym, or they have no time for the gym. They can't make time for the gym. And they don't want to go through the traditional route of weighing food, counting calories, or cutting out entire food groups. So, they don't want to cut out carbs or sugar. They still want to be able to eat sugar, carbs, biryani, kebabs, curries, everything. And they don't want to go to the gym or even exercise. And my USP is that I'll help you lose weight without exercise or without any strict, rigid dieting. So you can carry on eating almost like the way you do. And that's my USP. And alhamdulillah, we've had over 300 successes. with that.
Brilliant, brilliant. So I'm going to come back to the point of Desi does in a minute, but why have you chosen this or to do this? Or, obviously, 'cause you've got a background in teaching, you've done other stuff. What was it that got you involved on this path, and why do you basically do this?
Okay, so I mean, this my story has like four arcs, right? One is when I was 8 years old, I saw my dad have a heart attack. That was the first thing that made me cognizant of health, right? But then later on, when I was 14, my dad suffered a stroke, and we understand that both them things are from a similar mechanism. It's a clogging of the artery. So then my dad had a stroke when I was 14, and then for the next 8 years of his life, till he passed away, may Allah have mercy on him, in 2002, um, he was effectively a cabbage. One side of his body was paralyzed. He couldn't do anything. My mum became the main carer, and I watched him really, really struggle and suffer. And he wasn't that old. He passed away mid 60s.
Mhm.
And now, I also had a rare case of tuberculosis. From the age of about 15, I was in Muslim boarding school. I left that, I fell ill, I was getting beaten up, and I eventually left that. And then for the next 4.5 years, my health deteriorated, and I went from being initially I was suffering from this neck pain, very rare case tuberculosis, and that kept getting worse to the point it was every month, then every 2 weeks, then every week, and then I became housebound eventually, and then bedbound, and for many months I couldn't even get out of bed.
Wow.
So in order for you to appreciate something, you have to have it taken away. Once something's taken away, you appreciate it. So eventually, and it's a massive long story in itself. We can have an entire podcast on that. But eventually, the medical establishment found out what it was after I spent 3 months in hospital. They did a biopsy, or they did this MRI scan, found some massive tumor or something in my head. Then they did a biopsy of that. They figured out it was tuberculosis. They put me on medication, and within about 6 months, I recovered. Prior to that, we went to all sorts of ruqya and beads and whatnot. They spent so much money on all of this alternative medicine, right? So, so then, 20, like 2000, what was it? 1999, halfway through, right? They diagnosed me. Alhamdulillah, within 6 months, I started to recover. I was no longer bedbound, housebound, and then I could get, I got back to normal, pretty much of a normal life. Then I started gaining weight for the first time in my life. Until then, I was underweight. I started gaining weight. That ballooned out of control. And then eventually I went to the gym, went crazy with it. I did similar to what you did, like, the hard 75, really cut everything out, trained 3 or 4 hours. Literally, I was training on average about 3 hours a day. I lost the weight, but I became skinny fat. And then since 2002, I got myself 2004-ish. I was okay for about a couple of years, and then I gradually started gaining weight. I got married, had kids, and then I've been battling with my weight. I battled with my weight from 2004 until 2012. Even though I was in the gym, even though I was constantly yo-yo dieting, I struggled with my weight. And then from 2012 onwards, I managed to, over the next few years after that, I managed to figure out how to lose weight and keep it off. And I've kept it off since, and I pretty much had abs ever since then. So then I got into coaching. So then around 2019, I left full-time teaching, and I got into online coaching. And again, that's another story in itself, how I got into that. And initially, I was coaching for another coach, and I realized that he was a good coach, he was doing a good job, but he didn't understand our community and our needs. Plus, I realized, as again, going back to my history of health and all this stuff, realized that our community, South Asian men, and that includes North African, Arab, we have are 6 times more likely to suffer from heart disease, diabetes, and stroke. And this is getting younger each year, right? So I have many clients who are doctors, and they tell me now they get people in their surgery as young as 19 that are diabetic, or 18 that are diabetic. This was unheard of. It used to be late 30s. It's shifting more towards mid and early 30s now. But I speak to a lot of people late 20s, early 30s who are diabetic. So I felt that nobody was specifically catering for this group of people, this demographic. There's lots of good coaches, but they knew how to tell you how many units of alcohol to have on a Friday, how to deal with your hangover on a Sunday, right? And um, the food selection, things like that. They just didn't understand the culture of how, you go to your in-laws, they feed you, you know, your wife cooks for the whole family, and you eat, you go to your parents. They don't understand all of that. So I was working with this coach. I noticed that he had one or two Asian clients, and he didn't understand their needs, and Muslim clients. So, and I did. So I thought I can do a much better job and cater for this audience specifically. So the next question people ask me, why do you work with professionals? And the reason I work with professionals, and I hope, and it's not always the case, I hope that they understand the need for processes and systems, because alhamdulillah, we have a repeatable process, and we can get results like almost like a conveyor belt. You know, you can get an exact outcome. Similarly, we can get a very, very exact outcome, even though we work with everyone on an individual one-to-one basis and we tailor things specific to their life and circumstances. We still have a particular process to get results. And we hope that if they come from a professional background, they'll understand that there's a need for processes and systems. Otherwise, they don't. And I mean, not everyone's like that, but although sometimes they won't understand, oh, why should I fill in this form? Why should I do this? And can I not just call you at 11 p.m.? So
Brilliant. And do we know why then that age is getting lower and lower? So why is it 18 and 19-year-olds? Is it a case of diet? Is it lifestyle? What is it exactly that's causing this
it's
problem at such an earlier age?
it's a factor. It's many factors, and this is one of the problematic things is online. People just reduce it to one thing. It's a very reductionist approach, and it's not just one thing. It's a combination of factors. Right. Biggest one is the food environment. We've got so many more fast food places and food marketing. It's always constantly in your face. We are not eating any longer just to feed our stomachs. We are feeding our emotions and we're feeding our
Mm.
feelings. Right? That's the biggest thing that I even spoke about the other day, right, on social media. So we're eating when we don't need to eat, and we're eating when we're not hungry, and we're just eating constantly. And then the quality of the food we're eating is very poor as well. So it's not satiating food. It's snacks and it's chocolates and crisps and cookies, and none of these foods are satiating. They are very hyper palatable, meaning that they're engineered to make you want to eat more, and without satisfying you. So they don't satisfy you, but you can eat unimaginable amounts of it, and very, very high calorie dense. So the food, and then the food, it's always in your face as well, right? There's more fast food places, like I said. There's more takeaways. It's sedentary behavior is on the increase. Like now, a lot of people work from home. You don't even have to go to the shop to pick your stuff up. You've got Uber Eats, you've got Deliveroo, and all of this stuff. So the average, say, step count would have been maybe 15, 20,000 as just without thinking. Now we have to consciously try and do 10,000 steps. And most people, on average, don't even get 2 or 3,000 steps a day, right? So,
Mm.
like we have before, right? Even cars weren't that popular. You might have to go to the public transport, so you still walk 5-10 minutes to the bus stop or train stop, and then catch something. Then you walk 5 minutes. Now, if you are working, you commuted to work. You get in your car, you drive to work. You sat down all day. You come back home. You sat down in front of the TV. So the sedentary behavior and a lot of things that don't require manual labor. Yesterday I was working on my garden. I was trying to cut a tree down, right, manually. But you get electric saw and you can just cut it down in seconds, right, or minutes. So we're washing. We're just extremely inactive. The food environment has gone progressively worse. Stress and all that stuff is much worse as well. So the fact that we're stress eating and poor sleep quality, all of these factors combined have made it much, much worse.
And listening to all of that, then it's like if you are a professional Desi dad, and I'm going to ask you why it's Desi and not Muslim,
Mm.
but what then, like, most people will just get overwhelmed with that because it's like, I can't make one change. You have to make a whole heap of changes here. So how would you start to sort all of that out if you are at the end of that spectrum where you're doing all of those things wrong?
So I always say always start with your why. Right? Know why you're doing it, right? Because I think the biggest thing is people are not problem aware. They don't understand the severity of their problem, right? Or one is like, here, this is what can happen to me, but at other times, uh, this is what can happen to me, or how much weight do I have to lose? Because most guys I speak to need to lose about 3 stones, 2.5 to 3 stones, but they think they only need to lose a stone or less than that. It just take me a few weeks, I'll lose it. If I get to the gym, if I just make time for the gym, I'll lose it. If I just start dieting, I'll lose it. But in reality, they have about at least a stone and a half to 2 stones more than they think they do. Now, I've got so many data points to back this up, right? So that's one issue, being how much weight do I have to lose? Secondly, what are the consequences for me? And thirdly, like I said, they're not, like, if they sit down and think, oh, do I get out of breath if I walk up the stairs? Oh, I do. Do I have poor sleep? Yes, I do. And I play with my kids, do I get out of breath, or do I struggle with energy? Do I get aches and pains? Quite often they're having all these things, but they're not consciously aware of them. If they sit down and they become consciously aware of them, so those 3 things. Once we've established that, the next thing is, I would say to guys, is keep a food diary. See where is your biggest calorie intake coming from. Like, where is this excess food consumption coming from, and where can you shave it off? Where can you shave some off? So keeping a food diary, you become aware of your triggers, like the environments, um, the the emotions that lead up to it, um, the circumstances, the people. You become aware of all your triggers, what you're eating, when. Once you become aware of that, then let's see where we can get the biggest win. So if you find yourself grabbing a latte every morning to work, right, and that's a 600 calorie latte. Like, sometimes I saw this Oreo one yesterday, it's 1,000 calories, right? So if you find yourself grabbing one of those every morning and you realize, damn, this latte is 600 calories, I don't need that. I can get to the office and make myself a coffee, or I can take some coffee from home, right? That would be a quick win. Or where can I make a swap? It can be, sometimes it can be elimination. Sometimes it can just be a swap, or sometimes it can be a reduction. It doesn't have to be an massive overhaul all in one go. So then you gradually increase on that. And in terms of activity, take a note of how many steps you're getting, and gradually increase that as well.
Okay, brilliant, brilliant. And so to go back to that question, then why is it Desi dads and not Muslim dads?
So I think we've spoken about this. Do you really want the answer? So even recently, when I put something Muslim out, I find when I put Muslim out, I attract the wrong types of individuals who are not an ideal fit. They tend to more align with more of my former self. How I was in the past. I mean, even worse. Like, I find that they tend to have a really, really poor mindsets. Most of them. I've worked with loads. I've worked with loads of imams, scholars, and things like that, and I've found that it's a massive challenge to work with them. One is, like I said, the denial aspect. So they're not even willing to acknowledge it. Secondly, it's like they don't have a strong enough desire to want to better themselves. So when I work with, say, I've worked with recently a brother called Rafat, right? He's a founder, he's a tech founder. He already has a lot of good habits. He's already an established individual who has had to be quite disciplined to build his business to where he has. So now I just show him how he can transfer some of those mindsets, some of those skills and behaviors into a different domain, as opposed to having to drag somebody up. So if you're 100 and something kg, and I have to convince you that you're overweight, and you're like, no, I'm not overweight, and then I convince you that you say, oh yeah, yeah, maybe I am, and then again you go back to no, or when you go into that environment where everybody's big, and everybody say, oh, just nothing wrong with you, eat, right? As opposed to the other environment where everybody's quite slim, right? So this tech founder or one of the other people that I work with, they'll go to an environment where they're amongst white faces and other faces, and they're all quite slim, and they're all CEOs, and they're all successful businessmen or in successful careers, not necessarily businessmen. They could be lawyers, they could be doctors, they could be, and they're slim, and they're in good shape, and you're the only one that's in poor shape, or you're one of the few. As opposed to you go to an environment where everyone's out of shape, and they're also telling you, "Oh, just eat, it's all right, nothing wrong." And the thing is, it's not about this life; it's just about the hereafter, and so for those reasons.
So that mindset issue keeps coming up again. And how then, well, obviously you said you tried with it and it didn't work out, but isn't fit Desi dad the same then? Is it, what is it, does that word just make it different in their own mindset, or what is the the difference there?
I still tend to attract mainly Muslim men. I'd say 90% or 95% of our clients are brown Muslim men or North African Arab and stuff. I've had quite a few white Muslim men as well and black Muslim men, but they tend to, I'd say about 95% Muslim, right? Whatever ethnic background they're from. Um, but but they tend to be a different caliber. Like I was saying that in terms of with the other brothers, it's a very, very defeatist, very fatalist. They've given up. They've got a victim mindset. Whereas these guys, they don't have a victim mindset. They come with a very optimistic, very ambitious. They they want to be better.
Okay, so the reason I asked this, because we've kind of touched upon it. I know we've definitely touched upon it in private conversations. So there's also a lot of mindset issues with. I mean, I don't want to generalize, but obviously, just for the sake of time and whatnot. But Muslims and entrepreneurship and business is a big thing. I mean, I put a few posts out, and you get a lot of kind of angry responses straight away. And what's been your experience from the entrepreneurial side? Obviously, you've had your struggles, and I'm sure there's a lot more Muslims that feel the same way. And I get a lot of people saying, "Oh, in the Muslim community, why are we so behind everybody else? Why are we not progressing like everybody else? What's the issue?" And what do you think is the problem with that regard in the community?
Again, I think a lot of it is to do with our backgrounds and where we come from. When I speak to Muslims who come from more, say, affluent backgrounds, educated backgrounds, they don't tend to have as many of the mindset hurdles as we've had. Um, but mainly when we come from India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, and South Asia, and they come from poor backgrounds, they tend to bring this baggage with them. All of the poverty mindset and things like that. They tend to bring that baggage with them. Um, Now, um, on the other hand, like you said, a lot of people are using Islam and Muslim, right? And they are. It's for some of the marketing I've seen. Honestly, I don't think they care at all that is anything to do with Muslim. It's just purely for marketing, right? So yesterday I saw a water bottle. It says, I was going to send you this actually. It said it's a halal water bottle, right? It's Sharia compliant design, right? And I went to the bathroom, my boy's bathroom yesterday, and he's got one. It's spray. It's just sprays water, right? It's a normal water bottle. He didn't get it from this advert. He already got one from like Temu or somewhere, right? And it's just like a 1.99 bottle, and they're trying to sell this bottle for like 15-20 pounds as Sharia compliant design and halal. And, and it's like, what is Sharia compliant and halal about a water bottle? so, and then recently I've seen a lot of supplements and things like that. So I've seen this supplement where sleep aid, and it says all of the ingredients from the Quran, right? All the ingredients from the so he made this blend where he mentioned we got every ingredient that's mentioned, or every fruit or uh, food or veg or fruit that's mentioned in the Quran, and he's made a sleep supplement with it. And it's like, okay, that again, I did comment, and I said, look, this is not the way you do entrepreneurship, right? And this is honestly, I felt like it's absolute mockery because the Quran doesn't instruct you to make a sleep supplement with everything that's mentioned in the Quran, and um, it's just wrong on so many levels. It's completely wrong on so many levels.
So, what do you think the problem is? So, basically, I've put out some content on this, and I've had some strong opinions on it. And for me, it's like I think there's a real lack of Muslim role models, especially in business and entrepreneurship, specifically. And like I know there's a lot of Muslim business owners out there, but majority of them are not online, or they're doing their own thing on the side, and nobody really knows about it. Which obviously I understand why. Obviously, our community's got this thing with evil eye and nazar and all of this, and some people are private. But when you look at the landscape now, the next generation of Muslims are learning business and entrepreneurship online.
Mm,
YouTube, TikTok, Twitter, whatever it is. And who are they learning from? The majority are non-Muslims, and that's not necessarily a bad thing
mm,
until you get to the point where the spirit of Islam is different to the spirit of modern day marketing,
mm,
and there's a real difference there, in my opinion. And I think even as Muslims, we've got a different standard, or maybe a higher standard
mm,
than anyone else, but that's not coming through. So these kids are learning from non-Muslims, and some of the techniques are question, even from a non-Muslim perspective, they are unethical and
mm,
questionable, and they do have an impact on character and principles. But the way it's being taught is, well, this is normal, this is how it's being done, so I'm going to imitate that.
mm.
But we don't have that many Muslim role models saying this is the Islamic way to do it. And I suppose I understand why they want to, possibly stay away from that, because as soon as you start talking about Islam and Muslims online, you've just got a whole heap of people ready to go after you and bring you down and say, oh, but why are you talking about this when you're doing this, or why are you doing this, or when you've said that before?
Yeah,
So
you go down a completely different rabbit hole. You
yeah.
end up going down a completely different rabbit hole. Like I had somebody recently debating with me on the dice thing, and they wanted to hold a whole debate. I said, look, you have your opinion, man. I don't want to debate you because I haven't got time for that nonsense, right? But this is the people you end up attracting, right? Not people who are interested in your product or service. You get people who want to argue over polemics.
Mhm.
So
Mm. So back to the point then.
role
What
models,
then? Do we need more Muslim role models, or
we
what do you think, in
certainly
your opinion?
we
What do we need to do
certainly
here?
do. So, and to finish off your other question from earlier, you got some people who are marketing halal water bottles, but the majority of Muslims have a very, very negative relationship with money and finances. And like I said to you, because of the background we come from, we think like they have because they have such a poor relationship with money, they're not able to make it. They see money as something evil or being worldly or materialistic or dunyafied, right? And they don't realize that money is just a tool, right? And all of these things are just a tool. They're not either good or bad. It's what you do with them. And again, what are your intentions um, in the pursuit of it? And secondly, in the pursuit of it as well, what do you do? Like, Quran ayahs and ahadith say that, look, as long as you're not neglecting your prayers, as long as you're not neglecting you're compromising your principles, right, in the process of wealth accumulation, then there's nothing wrong with it. And if your intentions are good and pure, then you will get rewarded for it, right? And I was talking to a brother called Maruf Yusuf the other day. He owns Halal Ad, and we were discussing this. And he's got an interesting book called Seven Steps to Success in This World and the Hereafter. And him and I and a few others, we align with this very much, that we believe that entrepreneurship is the way forward for the ummah. Because right now, look, we're boycotting. Then there's nothing to have. There's nothing. We've got nothing. We literally, like, we don't own anything, right? Whether it's a car, whether it's a mobile phone, whether it's technology, whether it's social media platforms, whether it's coffee, drinks. We, I think I'm reading an interesting book called Misquoting Muhammad at the minute, and in that it talks about as well, how Muslims kind of the history of Muslims, how we was at the forefront and then we kind of withdrew. We went down this route of um, I mean, Sufism, but nothing wrong with Sufism, but Sufism in the sense that we're completely detached from the dunya, right? And we have nothing to do with the dunya. We just focus on ourselves and withdraw. But then, and this is how Islam is understood by a lot of people now, that we don't participate in the dunya. We just kind of withdraw and work on ourselves. But then you come back and you have nothing to contribute, right? You haven't added any value to the world, and you become dependent on everyone and everything else. And there's the hadith where the upper hand is better than the lower hand. And there's a hadith where it says, the strong Muslim is the one who, sorry, the strong believer is more beloved to Allah than the weak believer. And Allah hasn't didn't or the Prophet didn't define what he meant by strong believer, physically, financially, mentally, in many ways. But right now, as an ummah, we're really at the bottom and we're extremely weak, and we have very little. We have very little leverage. We have very little leverage, and we need to bring the leverage back. And I've spoken about this. I said, look, if we follow Islamic principles, whether it's our health, whether it's business, right, whether it's governance and law, if we had a model society of Muslims who acted on all of the principles of Islam, because if we acted on all the principles of Islam, we had this model society, we would be the fittest, we'd be the healthiest, we would be the most advanced, our jurisdiction would be the most fair and just, right? There would be better welfare in our communities, better health. I feel that other communities would look at this model community and think, wow, what is it about that community that they seem to have everything figured out? And we wouldn't even need aggressive dawah or street dawah. People would be flocking. You know how we're all flocking to the West now? Everyone's flocking to the West and trying to get citizenship in America or Canada or UK. The same thing would happen the other way around. Everybody would be flocking to be a part of this state. And many people would become Muslims just by looking at us and just by trading with us, just by doing business with us. But yeah, I think that's one of the things, is that people think that, as Muslims, we shouldn't be a part of the dunya. We're just for the akhirah. And again, what I said to you about the health people. When I attract people in the health, I get the same attitude. Like, they don't really have a strong desire or passion to better themselves because they think it's worldly or it's narcissistic. I even had a client say to me, he's been through my fatness program, he joined my muscle building program, and he's been a little bit non-compliant, right? It's been very hit and miss. And then I pulled him up on it the other day, and he said, look, I don't feel like I should be going to the gym because feels a bit narcissistic.
Okay.
And he's a very religious brother. And I only ever get this kind of rhetoric from those brothers. And even though we've had the conversation that health is a part of Islam and health is
yeah, absolutely. I was going to say, yeah. I mean, I suppose this is again comes down to modern day marketing and programming and conditioning. Because why are we in the gym, right? I mean, obviously we're in this Instagram culture where everybody's flexing and whatnot. So from that aspect, I see why it is. Obviously, it can seem narcissistic, but at the end of the day, like, our bodies are, a trust. Yeah. So God has given us the ability to be strong, but it's for us to work for it. If we don't, then are we not basically saying to, well, God, we've taken it for granted. Thank you, but no thank you.
We're not maximizing our potential.
Yeah.
And you asked about role models. Yes, we have to have principles when it comes to doing business. I feel we should have our own cars, and we should have our own phones, we should have our own media. Now, the way we do it, like you said, some of the tactics that are used in modern marketing are not ethical, right? Like, and I've pulled people up about this, and I've had some heated discussions myself with some people who are pushing the whole halal thing. Like, another reason, like I said, I don't use Muslim too much in my marketing because I don't want anyone to think that I'm using Islam to market.
Yes.
I don't feel like I should be. I mentioned I'm Muslim, and I mentioned there's an Islamic element to it and a Muslim element to it, but I don't push the whole Muslim thing because I don't want to feel like I'm using Islam or religious sentiments to sell. Now, I've seen some people push the whole halal Muslim thing really hard, but then when I've got into their funnel, right, or when I've gotten or in their DMs, I feel it's highly un-Islamic or unethical, their approach. Like they do the whole price drop. Oh, it's £10,000 today. £10,000. The program's £10,000, but if you buy it right now, I'm going to give you a £5,000 discount. Like, you're going to give me a £5,000 discount? Okay, fair enough. Right? Fair enough. Fair enough. So if I come back tomorrow, you can't give me that £5,000 discount. But you say no.
It's continuous. The real price is 5,000, but because of the marketing principle, is make it look more valuable than it
Yeah.
is,
But
and then
then
drop
they'll
it.
message you and say, "Hey, listen, you can still have the 5,000 off. You can still have
Mm.
5,000." And then a week later, they'll still message me, "Hey, the £5,000 still open, right?" So I have used price drops. I have used discounts. However, if I give you 24 hours, you've only got 24 hours, right? If you come back to me 48 hours later, you're not going to get it, right? Because I've seen urgency and scarcity 100% work,
Work,
but they
but they're
should be
misused,
real.
aren't they?
100% they work, because I've seen people, right, who we've had calls with, and they'll be thinking about it, thinking about it for months and weeks. The minute I give them a time limit, or I give them a discount, I give them a time limit on that discount, they make a decision. Or whether there's a deadline, they make a decision. Otherwise, they don't make a decision for ages. So I have used discounts and price drops and things like that, scarcity and urgency. I do use it, but we stick to it. Like if you come to me another time, you will not get that price. And if I give you an offer and you come
Yeah.
a week later, or otherwise until I run that offer again in a year's
Mm.
time or 2 years' time.
No, no, I understand. And just go back to something you said earlier about the principles and ethics. The issue that I'm seeing, though, is these people do not think they're doing anything wrong. They think they are being ethical and principled. And I think that's the issue. This is almost a subjective topic in terms of where do you draw that line between what's ethical and what's not. Obviously, if something's haram or halal, that's a very straightforward, easy thing to do. But when it's not defined, how then do we draw that borderline between what is ethical and what isn't, in your
Mm.
opinion?
I think it's always going to be subjective. It's always going to be a little bit subjective, and the I lost my train of thought now. the so sorry. Carry
No,
on.
it's fine. So
Yeah.
basically, because basically I've had this conversation with many people, and I've had business dealings with especially when I was in the law firm and in the legal industry, and even now, like you're getting these promises, right?
Sorry.
And then
Sorry. I remember. What I'm saying is, I think sometimes they think that the ends justify the means.
yes,
Yeah. They think, look, if he's going to get to the result, if I'm going to help him anyway, it doesn't matter how I get him to that sale or get him onto the program. It's at the end, it's good for him anyway. But I've seen some where I've thought to myself, no, you are not going to get him results. You won't be able to,
hmm
right? You won't be able to, or your success rate is like 20%, right? Why do you think that, or why are you making these big promises? But we know this, that, look, in terms of programs and offers, we know that, look, a book is going to have the lowest success rate. The next thing that's going to have low success rate is courses. And somebody said to me yesterday, 2 days ago, it was an ads guy, and he said to me, courses are for people who feel like or want to feel like they're doing something about the problem, but not actually doing anything about it. Because they get on a course and won't go through it. Because coaching and mentorship is where the highest success rate. Um, so, but like I said, if your success rate is abysmal, if 9 out of 10 of your people are not achieving anything, and you keep taking that one, and I've seen some marketers do this, they use that one success story for 3 4 years, one success story, right? And you go on their website, or you go on their, you do your due diligence, and there is nothing else there. There is no other substance, and they're just marketing off that one success rate. And
the counter to that they would say is the people are not following through. They're not doing the work. I can coach and I can guide, but then if people don't take action, what can I do there?
100%, I agree. You can't force anyone to do anything. And that's why, but that's why we go off success rate. Look, anything about 60-70% success rate is good for me. I think anything over 60% is realistic. Like, you're not going to get everybody through, right? But 60-70% is good enough. But if your success rate is 1% or 10%, right, then there's a problem.
Hmm.
You know,
Hmm.
it
But you're never going to
depends.
get those stats and figures.
No, no.
Yeah, I suppose that, yeah, obviously that's obviously a lot to do with on online coaching. But even I've seen people where they've agreed like a contract or they've agreed figures, but then when it comes time to pay, it's like, there's a reason or an excuse that comes in, and they don't basically follow through. I've worked in environments where everyone's there giving salams and mashallahs, but then they screen each other behind their back, almost like, a flick just gets switched when we talk about money or business. And I think that's one of the key things that's holding the community back, because there is a lack of trust. And if you don't have trust, you're not going to build anything together. And if
Mm.
you're not going to build anything together, then you're never going to own a car or a tech like you're talking about. So this starts from top to bottom. Like, but how do we really, everybody's, right now, especially since the war, there's so many Muslims talking about building things, building things, building things. But it's really difficult to get people together when there's a lot of egos involved. There's a lot of difference in opinion in terms of what's ethical and what's not. So before we can start even thinking about building these big enterprises and taking, ownership back, how do we solve this issue here, which is the foundation of bringing all of this together?
The In terms of, what's ethical, I think it's always going to be subjective. Again, like I said, I'm reading this book, Misquoting Muhammad, right? And apart from things that are very, very clear, there's always been differences of opinion, and there always will be, right? Things are subjective. The way people understand certain things is subjective. But you have to have certain boundaries, and that's it. There's boundaries you don't cross, but within that, we're going to be on different spectrums, right? I get that. Now, in terms of, um, we have to try. The other thing that we do is we compete, right? We shouldn't compete. We should try and work together and assist each other. So if you're making cars, right, and you need tires, right, I could be the guy that makes the tires and supply the tires to you, right? Somebody else does the electronics, and he can do the electronics, and we work together to create something rather than compete. And the other thing we do is we compete on price rather than quality. Right? That's another big thing, that we compete on price and try and run each other down, right? And having said that, I've had some clients go through my program, and they set up as coaches, and some of them,
Mm.
I supported some of them, right? But
Mhm.
others I didn't, because they took my stuff, rubbed my name
Yeah.
out, pushing it as their own. Now,
Mhm.
in terms of, if there's so much of this going on, how do we? I think there's a book called, Dan Heath, Chip and Dan Heath. They've written a few books. One is Make It Stick or something like that. But they've written a few books. On one of them, they say look for, you're looking for, is it the not the blue zones, or the areas of light. So you're looking for that one area of light. So they went to Africa, and they found that people are dying of illnesses, certain illnesses. But then some areas had really, really low rates of illness, or they were doing things really, really well. So you find those, and Omar Da Costa talks about this as well, because I've had loads of conversations with him, and I've said, you know what, man, I'm really disillusioned with what's going on. And he said, look, rather than talk about the negative, he goes, look for the positive. It might be 1 in 10. He goes, it might be that 1 in 10, but find that 1 in 10. Right? Look for the light zones, right? And find that 1 in 10 and promote them and push them and talk about them and
Yes.
highlight their work.
Yes.
So I think that is the solution: is to find the 1 in 10 or the 1 in 100 that's doing things right,
Hmm.
and trying to work with them, collaborate with them, promoting them, pushing their work, and talking about them. So the more we talk about the good spreads. And
Absolutely.
this is a lesson for myself. It's a lesson for myself. And I was listening to tafsir of Surah Nur. I was studying it recently. And again, Allah talks about, the story of Ifk and Hazrat Aisha and stuff. And when I was listening to tafsir, it says that Allah, when it comes to gossiping and poor bad practice, right, and things that are going on in the community that are negative, you don't put a megaphone to them.
Yes.
You don't broadcast it everywhere. You deal with them. You don't turn a blind eye and brush it under the carpet. You deal with them, but you deal with them in closed circles, and you deal with them privately, not in the public eye, unless it's a public matter that everybody needs to know about, right? But you definitely deal with them. You set up a process and system, and you don't just air it. But when it comes to good things, you air them, and you deal with them publicly, and you publicize them.
Brilliant, brilliant. No, I mean, the time has absolutely flown by, and we are definitely going to have to do another episode because there's just so much more that we need to cover. But time doesn't permit this time. So before we wrap up, I'm going to ask you for your final thoughts on how people can deal with their Minotaurs. But before that, how can people contact you, and who is your ideal client?
So if you type in Adam Kaan, K-A-A-N, on Google, I should come up. I'm very active on LinkedIn and Facebook, but my website's Kaan Fitness. And my ideal client is anybody who wants to lose weight, any professional. And you don't have to be professional as long as you act professionally, right? Who wants to lose weight without relying on exercise and without going on any strict diets where you're having to cut out entire food groups or even sugar.
Brilliant, brilliant. So, parting words then, what advice would you give to anyone watching this who's facing Minotaurs of their own? What advice would you give them to overcome their challenges?
Learn to take calculated risks and strive for excellence in all of your endeavors.
Excellent. Love it. So I will drop the links to Adam's social media profiles and websites in the comments below. I hope you enjoyed the episode, Adam. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for being here. And inshallah, we definitely will do this again. As for the video, hope you enjoyed it. And I'll see you in the next episode. Take care.
Thank you for
Bye
having
bye.
me. Okay,